Ready to be live. There we go. It
I
just
think
did
we're
it.
live. Yay, yay, yay. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Brentwood Inspired Living Center. This is our Sunday morning Facebook Live. And I am so glad that you're here with us. We all warmly welcome everyone this morning. My name is Amy Van Ling, and I am the spiritual director here at Brentwood Inspired Living Center. Welcome to Brentwood. Oh, turn down our phones. That might have been my phone. I'm here with TJ Woodward and Pat McCulley, Ronnie Ong, and Ed Salvador this morning. We are so glad to be here. So I have my phone in my hand. I tell everybody this every Sunday so you know what I'm looking down at. I have my phone in my hand because that's where I can find our Facebook Live feed, and that's where I interact with you. That's where I see your comments and your questions and your hearts and your love. So that's why I look down here at my phone, and then I can see who is sorry, I had that loud again. I can see who's jumping on with us. So good morning, everybody. We are so grateful to be here this Sunday morning. We love you. We bless you. Please check in when you log on here and let us know that you're here. Leave a note in the comments. I love to see your names and your good mornings. Good morning, Dawn. Good morning, Randy. Good morning, Catherine. She's from New Jersey. Thank you for tuning in from New Jersey. We love that. Good morning, Kathy. Everybody is jumping on with us. Maria, good morning. Yay, I'm so happy to see all of you. I know this is not the same as being in person, but we sure are doing our best. And I really love this Facebook Live because although we're not physically together, I feel we are together when we're on this live stream and we're chatting and when I get to see all your names jumping on. So thank you for being here and participating in this collective greatness. Good morning, Jenny and Nancy. We're so happy you're here, Nancy. Good morning. Good morning. Everybody is chiming in now. I see our numbers climbing up. I like that part. Oh, who's here? Who's here? So just for some reminders, I would like to remind everybody that our website is a great resource for information on what's going on here. If you check out our Giving Back page, you'll find all the organizations that we've selected to donate to this year. Some pretty good stuff going on there. On our prayer and healing page, you'll find some great resources, and that's where you can also submit any prayer requests that you might have. We love our prayer requests, and our prayer team is, as Betty jumped on just now and said good morning, she is our head prayer angel, and she is sure to make sure your prayers are lovingly tended to. Good morning, Ron. Everybody is jumping on. Yay! So what else? So we have our small groups during the week. That's on our small group discussion page. You can jump into any of those groups at any time. The Zoom link is there. We love to have you joining in and having some of that interactive time during the week. It's very important. So our website is brentwoodilc.org. You can find us there. You can send us an email from the website. You can send me an email directly at amy@brentwoodilc.org. Dusty is here. Good morning, Dusty. So after service, well, right after TJ's talk, we'll do Q&A with TJ, and that's really fun. So if you have questions and comments during TJ's talk, drop them in the comments, and I will get to those as soon as we conclude. And then at 11:30, we will tune into our interactive Zoom call, and that is the private link for us. It's on our homepage. Just jump in there. I like to think of that time 11:30 to 1 is our like mingle and chat time, our time that we would normally after service hang out together. So that's my idea for that call, and I love to see all of you there. So good morning, everybody's jumping on. Hi, Jennifer. So here we are on Facebook Live, and we will continue to use this platform until further notice. This was actually the day we were going to come back in person, and due to, you know, all of these changes and shifts, we're continuing on Facebook Live, which I'm so very grateful for, this technology. I'm tremendously grateful that we can connect in this way. So we will keep you posted. If you do not get our weekly email on Wednesdays, it's called the Weekly Connection, please email us and let us know, because we put a lot of information each week in those emails, and that's where we're updating weekly what's going on here, if we're coming back together, and all the details. So get on that list if you're not on that email list. Good morning, Luinda. Good morning, Dave. Okay, everyone is popping on, and we are so grateful that you are joining us. I'm sending love and blessings. I hope you can feel that over the technology waves. So I am so excited that TJ is with us this morning. We were chatting just before we went live, and actually Jan and I were chatting yesterday. TJ is just basically a member of our community. We were reminiscing about the first time TJ ever came here. I think it was in early 2016, and we were getting ready to paint. And TJ and I just hit it off like, we've known each other forever. And I said, well, we're going to Ace Hardware to pick out some paint samples. Would you like to go? And there we were, picking out paint samples. And the rest is history. So we are so grateful to have you, TJ. TJ is amazing. I will read his bio in just a few minutes. And then we have Ronnie Ong and Ed Salvador with us today, bringing their magical music, which is amazing music. And we appreciate you both so very much. And our musicians are stepping up to the plate lately. They have got to do all kinds of technology stuff behind the scenes with the Zoom and changing audio. So thank you so much for putting the time and effort into making music a little more clear coming through these Zoom waves. So, and Pat McCauley is here this morning with our inspirational reading and our prosperity blessing. And I'm so grateful that you're here with us. So, okay, everybody else is jumping on, and Karen and Florence and Stephen. Yay, yay, yay. Okay, everybody. Well, we're just going to go ahead and get started, and I will keep my phone here, keep my eyes peeled on the comments. Remember to drop any comments, any questions, any suggestions for TJ, and we'll get to those after his talk. Hello, Beverly. We're glad you're here. So I'm going to open us with our mission statement, and I invite you to just feel into these words. Our mission statement, our board prayed and visioned over these words. We were at a 3-day retreat. I want to say it was 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. So these words were not pulled arbitrarily. They were just intentional and loved upon, and we took the utmost care in the selection. So feel into these words with me. We are an open, heart-centered spiritual community, honoring the one presence within us. We welcome all to connect, grow, and expand in wisdom, compassion, and love. And so it is. Thank you for joining us this morning. I love to see all of you here. And we have Pat with our inspirational reading. Thank you so much, Pat, for being here with us. I'm going to hand the screen over to you.
Thank you, Amy. The reading this morning is The Act of Empowering Others Changes Lives by Lolly Daskell. He was sincere and pleasant, but he was also shy and kept to himself. He prided himself on never drawing too much attention to himself. His style of leadership was, in fact, a lack of leadership, in which he left most of his employees to their own devices. He was a good man, but he was not a leader. And now his company was paying a steep price. Through coaching, I had to explain what a true leader was and how empowering others is an important part of leadership. He asked why? Because it changes lives, I said. We can map our leadership by the ways in which we empower others. 7 ways. Number 1, by helping them reach new heights. As a teacher, you share your knowledge and your wisdom. You make a point of investing time and resources to show your people that you believe in them. And it's a win-win situation for all. Your job is to see the potential and find out what they lack to develop it and equip them with what they need. Number 2, by appreciating them. Everyone wants to feel that they count for something and are important to someone. People will work harder and work more for those who care about them, and their trust will earn you respect. Number 3, by having the right attitude. If you want to be successful at empowering people, you need to be mindful of how you show up, how you respond and react, and how you deal with conflict. Attitudes are contagious, and that fact is especially important when you're working to empower others. Number 4, by sharing information and giving them what they need. The best leaders think about what their people need to do their jobs well. You can't just take for granted that they have all that they need. You engage and share information and give them the knowledge and the tools they need to be successful. Number 5, by modeling the way of empowerment. The best teachers let others see, hear, and experience what empowerment is. They are mindful of their attitude, their moods, and their ethics, aware that people are looking to them to set an example. Number 6, by grooming others for leadership. When you groom others, you are transferring authority to them, allowing them to share in the load and giving them the opportunity to lead. In empowering them, you're ultimately working toward the day when you can hand over the baton. And just about everyone has the potential to empower others. Start looking for opportunities and see your leadership grow. Number 7, lead from within. When you empower people, you're influencing not only them, but also all the people they will influence in turn through their leadership. That is empowering.
I'm muted. Sorry. Thank you so much, Pat. Yes, it is empowering to empower others, isn't it? What a great list, too. One of the best books I think I've read on leadership is Conscious Leadership. I think we talked about that before, TJ. Thank you, Pat. Beautiful, heartfelt. Okay, we've got Ronnie and Ed here bringing us some magic. I'm going to hand it over.
Morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so we have two songs. I'm going to start with the more contemplative song. So I've always loved the prayer for protection, Unity's prayer for protection, which I think we recite as well here in Brentwood. So I decided to put it to music. So here goes.
Oh, thank you so much. Absolutely beautiful. So many comments. Yes, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you both. Wonderful. Okay, so we have Pat. Pat is bringing us our virtual prosperity time. So I invite all of us into this moment, opening up. Pat, I'm going to go ahead and hand the screen over to you. You're still muted. There you go.
No. The prosperity blessing this morning. Please join me now as we come together to celebrate our abundance and know that our community is thriving and growing and expanding and oh so prosperous. We are lovingly blessed to be in a world where technology helps us be connected. We are so very grateful for all of our ways of being with each other during these uncertain times. And we are very grateful for the financial support that is coming to us in new and less familiar ways. Change may be challenging, and learning to use PayPal or Zelle, or even remembering to write a check for your monthly donation and find the address and put it in an envelope in the mail is stepping up to a new paradigm. Thank you, each and every one of you, for your remembering that just as we, the community, depend on our spiritual home in times like these, Brentwood Inspired Living Center depends on the community to make sure that we can meet our obligations, including paying our rent and our monthly utility bills, and continuing to support each and every one of you. If you are in a group on Zoom or gaining sustenance from the Sunday speakers and loving being able to be listened to Ronnie or John over and over, please know that your financial support continues to allow us to bring our speakers via Facebook Live on Sunday mornings and share with each other via Zoom. All of the information about giving via Zelle, PayPal, or check is on our website, BrentwoodInspiredLivingCenter.org. And we lovingly say thank you as we continue our journey together.
Thank you so much, Pat. Thank you for bringing such a beautiful blessing to us. Yes, we absolutely appreciate all contributions, gifts. If you feel nourished, your mind, heart, soul, we thank you. Thank you for sharing with us. Okay, we've got more magical music coming up. Ronnie and Ed, thank you.
Okay, I get to sing this next song, so I'm going to give you a little blurb about it. It's a song I wrote a couple of months ago, and it's about change, which is a word that looms large in our existence right now. The name of the song is From Within, because change can start as something from within each of us. Every time I think the world is going crazy, it changes in a blink and hits us when we're lazy. Life is never what it seems. We hang on tightly to our dreams, but change can start as something from within. Everywhere I go, there's happiness and heartache. It forces us to grow and leave the past in our from within. Shine a light like a full moon on a silvery sea. The ocean is where I like to be. Change is in sight, like a ship that's on the horizon, with the sun in the east horizon waiting for me. Every day's a gift, a chance to start again, to give the soul a lift, to be your own best friend. Time may not be on our side, so take it far, enjoy the ride, and change the start of something from within. La da 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 da. Change the start of something. Change the start of something. Change the start of something from within. From within.
Yay, fabulous. Thank you. I love that. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, both of you. Yay. Well, thank you to Pat, Ronnie, and Ed. We're so appreciative of your presence and essence with us today. Thank you for joining us and bringing all the good stuff. Thank you. Thank you. Mwah. I love you. We'll see you on the other side on Facebook here live. Yay. Wonderful. Yay. Jan hopped on. Hello, Jan. Hello, Dawn. Hello, Christy. Good morning, everybody. We're so glad that you're here with us. And here I am with TJ Woodward. Yay. Let me see here about Ronnie. Sorry, just take a minute there. TJ, you're still muted. TJ is here, my friend, amazing human being, world changer. I was thinking about that the other day. I heard somebody say that, I think in a Facebook Live, world changer. I thought, you know, world changer, what is that? It's an amazingly conscious person making impact on lives, sending out these ripples of extraordinary love and support. And that's what you do, TJ. And tools for living a dynamic and connected life. I think you say that in your book. So we love you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I'm going to read TJ's bio to you so you get to know him a little bit better. TJ Woodward is a revolutionary recovery specialist, best-selling author, inspirational speaker, and addiction treatment consultant who has helped countless people through his simple yet powerful teachings. He is the author of the books Conscious Being, Awakening to Your True Nature, and Conscious Recovery, A Fresh Perspective on Addiction. TJ is also the creator of the Conscious Recovery Method, which is a groundbreaking and effective approach to viewing and treating addiction. Definitely check that out. He was given the honor of being ordained as an Agape minister by Dr. Michael Beckwith, and is also the founding minister of Agape Bay Area in Oakland, which was the first satellite community of the Agape International Spiritual Center in LA. Wonderful, amazing being. We appreciate you, love you so much. I'm going to pray us in, and then I'm going to hand the screen over to TJ. And remember to leave any questions, comments, and we will get to those for our Q&A right when TJ concludes. So take a deep inhale with me if you feel called to, and breathe into this. Today, we are so grateful to come together and take this deep breath of love and gratitude. Our prayer is yes. Yes to spirit leading us. Yes to opening our hearts and minds to the highest possibility. Yes to peace. Yes to wellness. Yes to joy. We align with the truth we know, divine oneness. We are here, right in this moment, to be present. We are present. We are available. We are attuned to joy, to harmony, to love. We invite blessings into our lives and claim this beautiful day Today we cover TJ with our love and our thanks, our thanksgiving for his presence and his message today. And so it is. Ashe.
So it is. Ashe.
Thank you, TJ, for being with us. Appreciate you.
Mhm. Wow. Thank you, everyone. So incredibly grateful. And I always like to start with gratitude anytime I present, anytime I speak, and for that matter, anytime I show up in any way with another human being, to tune into the frequency of gratitude. So huge gratitude to Pat for that reading. It's really interesting. I did a show this last week on compassionate leadership. So that's an interesting theme. I like to pay attention to themes, just to be aware of what is emerging. You know, if I hear it once, if I hear it twice, it's like, there might be something there for me to open up to a deeper level of awareness. Thank you to Ronnie and Ed for that incredible music. Gosh, I just love this. God is, and we are that frequency, and we are that in the world. And of course, Amy, I just love you and thank you for your compassionate and conscious leadership of this incredible community. I can't believe it's been 4 years since I walked into Brentwood Inspired Living Center. Did I get that right? And it was instant. You know, those moments where you feel an instant connection. That's what I experienced with this community. And, you know, I have the honor of speaking regularly with you, along with Reverend Joan Stedman, Reverend Verona Garland, all of us from Agape Bay Area. And we just always talk about the amount of love energy that is present when you walk in the room. And, you know, we're not walking in the room at this moment. So that's something that I really want to explore today. So the topic today is from powerless to powerful. And I want to start with a quote, and I'm going to just say that I don't know who wrote this, but my friend Jamie Lula, who is a phenomenal musician and a member of the Agape family in Los Angeles, posted this. And I've never had a post shared more often than this one. It's about 120 people have already shared this. So I thought, well, it must be something to bring today. And I got permission to use a word that's a little off color slightly for some spiritual centers, but probably not for Brentwood, right? So this is the quote. It's actually more like a paragraph. I am not a snowflake. My feelings aren't fragile. My heart isn't bleeding. I'm a badass believer in human rights. My toughness is in my tenderness. My strength is in the service of others. There is nothing more fierce than formidable, unconditional love. There is not a thing more courageous than compassion. But if my belief in equity, empathy, goodness, and love indeed makes me or people like me snowflakes, then you should know winter is coming. So I really feel so passionate about that paragraph because I noticed sometime back there was a conversation that was emerging where people that were coming from their heart or living in their heart were labeled as snowflakes. Now, this might sound political, and it's not political at all to me. It's actually very deeply spiritual because we have lived in an era in human consciousness for a long time. And we're talking not hundreds of years, but quite possibly thousands of years, where the masculine principle has been dominant. You could call it the mental or the physical, right? Strength and power have been equated as force. Force has been what we think of when we think of power. Now, David Hawkins wrote a book called Power versus Force. I know, Pat, you're watching. Pat and I both love him and love that book because it's recognizing that what most of us or many of us have been taught about strength actually isn't strength at all. That strength is actually in tapping into our essential power. Now, this is not a conversation about good and bad or right and wrong. In other words, I'm not here to say that force or anger or rage or making things happen is inherently wrong. What I am asking though is, how is it working? Because if we look at our country and our world that has been dominated by domination, we can see that it's creating more division, and we can see that it's creating more separation. So the fundamental question for me is, what do I want? How do I envision the world? And how does my own individual power and force create a change in the world? Because every single moment, each one of us is changing the world in one direction or the other. What would happen if we would take out all judgment of ourselves and ask the question, who have I come here to be? What is my vision for the world? So we're in 2020, which has been one of the most fascinating years in human history. And we're going to look back on this time and have all sorts of curiosity about what was up in the world. Now, a lot of us have been asking for change, and some of us have been talking about a radical change that is needed, a dramatic shift in consciousness, right? Amy, we've been talking about this, right? We've been saying there is a wave of change coming, and that change is going to usher in a new era where we're going to celebrate love. We're going to celebrate kindness, and we're going to celebrate compassion. What if everything that's happening in 2020 is exactly what we've been asking for? What if this thing that's happening in the world is so that we have an opportunity to go deeper into the spiritual essence that we are and ask the deeper questions? Who have I come here to be? What is my vision for the world? And what difference can I make? So if it's true that we're all changing the world moment to moment, that means we actually have a great deal of power. Lao Tzu, several thousand years ago, I think 2,500 years ago, I'm not sure. History has never been my strong suit because, to tell you the truth, I don't like to look too far back at history. Look back, but don't stare. But Lao Tzu, several thousand years ago, said, the greatest gift we can offer the world is that of our own transformation. So the ego can be seductive. We are living in an era where we have more communication and more opportunities to share, to share love, or to share something that doesn't really look or feel like love. We have more platforms than ever, and news is instant. We're also living in the era of reality TV, where people are playing roles and calling it reality. Now that is the way it's always been, because we always have our essential beingness, our spiritual essence, our God self, whatever language we use. Something that recently came to me is my essential nature doesn't need a name. So whether I call that God or source energy or love or essential beingness or my true nature, my Buddha essence, whatever word we use, when we feel into that and recognize that we came into the world with that, something really powerful happens. And then we come into a world that teaches us all sorts of things that are quite often counter to that truth. We must compete. There's limited resources. If you have success, that means I don't have success. I have to strive, I have to suffer, I have to resist what's happening in the world. What if those programs were not the whole story? I think we have been in New Thought ushering in a new era where we recognize that true power is in our essential beingness and that our thoughts and our perspective creates reality. But I also think unconsciously, and I think I talk about this pretty much every time I speak now, I think unconsciously, some of us have then gone to a place where we deny what's happening in the world, or we deny what's happening in our own ego or our own personality self. The number one gift we can offer the world at this moment is to compassionately allow ourselves to feel whatever's there. That's how we change the emotional climate of the world, because what's happening right now, in my estimation, maybe even my opinion, is that the ego is seductive. And it is, in some ways, much more comfortable to react and to resist and to fight against what we see as the oppressor or the opposite or the them. And what gets created when we live in a paradigm of us and them? I think there's something that's fairly innate in the human experience where we try to find our tribe. If you look back throughout human history, that was survival at some point, right? We needed to have our tribe to survive. But what happened is, because we had that at least partially innate desire to find what we consider to be our people, we unconsciously created the other. And then that got passed down from generation to generation to generation. And the way, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, it has created separation and divisiveness. Now, the reason I said fortunately or unfortunately is, again, it's very seductive to think that I have the right position, even my spiritual perspective. I believe oneness is what heals. I believe that looking for the spiritual essence in every human being is what heals. But someone else can equally think that they need to fight or strive just to survive. Who am I to judge where someone is at on their spiritual journey? Because here's the key, and this is what I really want to lean into, because those of you who are watching today are on a spiritual path, right? I don't think anyone that would call us snowflakes is watching right now. Just a guess. So I'm going to actually speak to those of us who do have a deep desire to bring more love into the world, because I know that's why we've gathered today. We're all on this spiritual journey, and many of us are asking the question, what the heck can I do right now in a world that seems to have gone crazy? I know in my own journey, when I was waking up to a greater reality, I had all kinds of insane behavior. I'm just going to name it, because there was a part of me that still wanted to cling to the old. There was a part of me that still wanted to cling to blame and finger pointing. But what I recognized is, the more I connected with and recognized my oneness with the source energy that I am, the more that I knew that that was true, the more the things that were counter to that no longer served me and no longer worked. And it was like a last gasp. So the reason I want to speak directly to those of us who have already made a commitment to bringing more love into the world, what I want to say is there a seduction of resisting right now? There's resistance movement. But is resisting against what we judge to be not good or bad or wrong, is it really working? Because I think what many of us have is a very strong intellectual understanding that if we fight against, we'll create more of. But what does that look like in our individual practice, moment to moment to moment? Let's take social media, for example. We could get in a debate of to mask or not to mask, or is the information we're receiving from the CDC accurate, or is it a conspiracy? Is the media dedicated to giving us news, or are they looking for ratings? See how easy it is to opinionate about that? I have opinions about it. I won't be sharing them at this moment, but I do have opinions about that. As people who have dedicated ourselves to peace, it becomes profoundly simple. When I resist and push against, and notice I didn't say if I push and resist, because there's a part of me that still wants to do that at all times. I personally don't think we're going to be free of that. There are stories of the master teachers who have come and have been free of the reactive mind. And for me, that in itself was seduction. I wanted to be completely free. I wanted to always be peace and love. But then I noticed there was this part of me that still wanted to finger point and resist and opinionate. And it was in the making friends with that I discovered true freedom. It was in acknowledging that the mind is always sorting, separating, and yes, even judging. In other words, I don't need my ego to die. I can simply recognize it for what it is. It's an opinionating machine. And when I recognize that I can make friends with that and live beyond it, I no longer need to fight. I no longer need to push against. I no longer need to get the last word in. I no longer need to educate you on what is right. Do you hear it? So what if it's not about getting rid of that? Because I think that's the seduction in spiritual circles. And I notice I'm using that word a lot. What is seduction? What does it mean to be seduced into something? In spiritual circles, we have often denied the humanity of ourselves. And so what I want to speak really clearly about right now, going back to my statement of the greatest gift we can offer the world is to feel our feelings. If I notice the reactive impulse, if I notice my mind going to rightness and wrongness, good and bad, why aren't people wearing a mask? Why aren't we opening up the country? Why do we have to shelter in place, right? See how the mind is always opinionating. As a matter of fact, my opinion might change in 20 minutes. And so if I'm tied to that and believe that's who I am, I'm going to suffer. So it could be true that we're powerless over certain events in the world. I'm powerless over certain political figures and how they behave. But when I recognize that I can step fully into my power, that's where we can actually begin to create change. Because I think it's a misnomer that in order to make change, even politically or in systems, in order to make change, we must fight. We must push against the oppressor. But there's always an oppressor. And guess what? I'm someone's oppressor because I'm speaking about love and light, and someone wants to resist against that. And so if I resist back and then they resist back and I resist back and they resist back, that is the cycle of suffering. And as Buddha said so clearly, you have the power to end your own suffering. So how do we end our own suffering? How do we step into a life that's filled with connection, filled with love, filled with awe and wonder? And how do we also make a difference in the world? We first must recognize that the truth of who and what we are is love. That's essentially who and what we are. That's the foundational principle of many New Thought teachings. There is only one power and one presence. And that we are that power. That power is not outside of ourselves. Of course, there's a paradox. It is outside of ourselves, but it's also inside of each and every one of us. As a matter of fact, I think as we evolve, we're going to recognize that we're not actually separate at all, that we're part of one organism. Think about that for a moment. Lean into that. And so if I'm not able or willing to honor and nurture my own emotional well-being, I will react. If I think I need to protect myself because I feel fragile, I will react. So what people often ask me is, so are you saying we should never fight for anything? You know, we fight COVID-19, we fight disease, we fight each other, we fight racism. But is it really working? How about we stand for love? How about, as that paragraph said, we recognize that being love in the world is actually strength, that service to others is actually a deeper awareness of the love that we are. The compassion for each other is the way we heal this planet. Because if it's true that I essentially am love and light, then that must also mean that it's true that every other being is essentially love and light. And yes, even the ones that have a very different opinion about the world. So in closing, what I want to offer really is an invitation to recognize and notice in what ways you might be living from the construct of good and bad and right and wrong. We live in a culture right now that is practicing something called cancel culture or canceling. We look at other people and look at something they did or said or believed in the past, and then we call them out for it. I have friends who call themselves open-minded, spiritual, who are literally copying and pasting old posts from people and saying, look, this person is a racist. Look, this person, fill in the blank. I understand, again, the seduction of that. I might even feel better if I call you out for some of your behavior, but there's no healing there. There's just more divisiveness. What if we actually have the difficult conversations rather than finger pointing? You know, sometimes people in the media have had pushback because they sit down and talk with someone of the opposing political party. I'm thinking of a public figure who is friends with a former president who has a very different point of view than she does. And people were pushing back. How could you be friends with him? And she said, because all my friends don't need to agree with me. Do you hear that? So why am I talking about that in terms of powerful? My friend Michael Beckwith talked about the role of rage and anger, that we don't need to deny our rage and anger. But if we vent our rage and anger, we haven't used its power. The power is, whoa, I'm noticing this emotion. I'm noticing this desire to make a difference in the world. And maybe I'm even noticing a desire to fight. But if I throw a chair through a window, I might feel better. But does that really make a difference in the world? And so what I really want to leave you with, and of course, we're going to do questions and answers because I love that. It's really a conversation more than question and answer. What I want to leave you with is, what if every single thought you have, every single feeling you're experiencing is not only okay, but it's part of your spiritual evolution, it's part of the waking up process? And what if, rather than resisting the emotions or even resisting the thoughts, we could embrace them and begin to question them and to allow ourselves to feel the emotion and allow it to move through us so that we can return to our true power? Force does not create change. Force creates division. We are, each of us, ushering in a new era where we are moving away from force and into power. And this is the moment. A lot of people are looking for a silver lining in everything happening in the world. What if you are the silver lining? What if each of us right now is being called to love more fiercely, have more compassion for our fellow humans and humanity in general? What if I could have a conversation with someone that disagrees with me and listen? So thank you so much. I feel the love, even though we're Zooming right now or Facebook living. Is that a word, Amy? Facebook living? I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your incredible community and for your dedication to really explore how we can be difference makers in the world, how we can stand for love, stand for peace, and know that that is power. So let's move into questions and answers. Actually, I want to invite us to take a little bit of a moment and do a short prayer before we do that. So taking a deep breath. How grateful I am to know that there is one power and one presence. God essence, Buddha nature, essential beingness. I know that this power is my life and it's the life of each and every being on this planet and in this cosmos. And because we know this to be true, and because we have come here today to gather with intentionality, we have made a difference on planet Earth. Because each of us has recognized more deeply that who we have come here to be is love, is light, is joy. That's how the world changes. And that's how it just changed. A shift, moment by moment, into honoring our humanity and recognizing that we do have a role to play. So with great gratitude, I release this now, knowing in the realm of spirit, it is already done. We simply release it and let it go. And so it is.
So it is. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Claim it.
Thank you.
Clear it. Thank you, TJ. So many wonderful, phenomenal little nuggets in there. I'm always jotting down some notes and my neck nodding in agreement. So it's so easy and flowing when you're in agreement, you know, but you're
Yes.
just so relevant and so necessary right now, you know, because there is this energy of division. And I love so much of what you said. The greatest gift we can give to the world is to feel our feelings. And in feeling our feelings, that's the transformation. Yeah. And leaning in to that feeling is part of the waking up process.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's I think right now we're being called to learn how to be with our discomfort, right? Like as a white person, I'm being called to look at my own unconscious biases. And sometimes, if not always, that's uncomfortable, right? And I've had some really uncomfortable conversations because I feel like that's what's needed right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, in so many ways, we're in a very uncomfortable time. You know, everything that's going on is uncomfortable. So yes. We're just in that, what is that, like the thought of the little chick kind of pushing out of the uncomfortable shell, right? Like, I'm uncomfortable. It's time to get out of here and move into something else. So yes, and ego is seductive. I love the way you said that. And what did you say? An opinionating machine. Very cute. I wrote these things down so you can remember. But yeah, okay, so let's check the feed here. Let's check in with comments and questions because both TJ and I love this part so much. So Catherine says, TJ, how did you get in my head? I've been asking the same questions. That is the thing about TJ that I love and resonate so much with are the empowering questions, the questions that propel us forward, the ones that take us and move us into that transformation, into that getting down into the roots.
Yeah,
okay.
Because I used to think that even in spirituality, I used to think there were answers and the answers were important, but I found that the questions are more important just because of exactly what you said, right? The comfort zone is great, except for we don't change when we're in our comfort zone. And so do we want to make a difference in our lives and in the world? And if so, there's that, I think Maria Neiman says trouble at the border. Like from this level of consciousness to this level, we have to go through that Earth's atmosphere and burn some stuff off. And that, you know, if you think about that, can be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Great news. We're uncomfortable.
Yes. Great news. We're uncomfortable. Yeah. And that, I think you touched on that too. What were you saying about that fight? You know, when we get into that fight, that is being in the same energy of what it is, you know, and so to really be that transformation, that change is moving out of that same vibration, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, let's check in here. Yay, comments. Dawn says, I wrote this morning, we achieve greater serenity in our relationships with others when we realize how little we actually know for sure and therefore hang on to our opinions with a loose grip. Yes, love that.
Right. So like right now, if you think you actually know what's going on with COVID-19, I mean, I said to my husband, Will, I'm like, honey, we have no idea what's really going on. We don't really know what's going on. And so that's why conspiracy theories are seductive too. It's like, oh, it's probably that. Oh, it's probably that. It's like a dog chasing a bone, trying to figure it out. So Donna, I love that. When I really realize how little I know for sure. Do you hear the for sure? Right. Yes. That's Byron Katie. Yeah. Yes. Is it true? Do you absolutely know that that's true? I'm sorry. I'm doing my finger.
Comes out once in a while, right?
Yes.
Cute, very cute. Yeah, love that. Yeah. So hang on to our opinions with a loose grip.
Yeah.
Good advice. Okay, so Maria says, thank you, TJ. Yes, stand for, not fight against. This is key. Patricia's saying, yes, read his books. Definitely. TJ has wonderful books. Catherine says, I welcome these conversations. Thank you, TJ. Thank you, TJ. That was great. I'll try to show love more deliberately to people who I disagree with. Yeah, that's a practice, right? Tricia says, thank you. Great information, especially right now. Thank you for being here. Kathy says, thank you, TJ. Just what I needed to hear today. Tricia asks, how do we create change without force? How do we take a stand? Great question.
Yeah. So I love that question. And because sometimes people, like a friend of mine said, as an LGBT person, he said, well, ACT UP was in people's face and they were doing protests and they were, blocking bridges and they were in St. Patrick's Cathedral, pretending to be dead on the floor. And he said, that's the only thing that gave you the rights you have today. Is that true? Do we know that's true? Or was it more about more and more of us having the courage to tell people who we are, or at least what our orientation is, because who we are essentially is not our orientation, but to be able to share that and to have the courage, one person at a time, families learning how to love someone that they might have had a judgment of, or they might have been taught was wrong. So it's not that there's anything fundamentally right or wrong with force. That's the main piece. Because what I don't want to do is say, oh, it's violence is terrible, it's bad, it's horrible, right? Then I'm in judgment, right? I personally am choosing a path of peace, but the fundamental question is, what really creates change, right? I really have seen historically that love is what actually creates change. So the question of how to is always, for me, it always starts with noticing my resistance, noticing, because if I can notice the impulse to react, the reactive impulse, if I can notice that part of me that gets, and then lean into it, and then I can have the difficult conversation. So would it be interesting to ask 3 people that voted for someone that you would never vote for, why they did, and really listen? We are so programmed, I think, to believe, well, how could I do that? They're wrong, right? Instead of looking at it through the lens of compassion. And then if we can create a space where we can actually start sharing. See, I actually don't think that we're divided. I think that the media wants us to believe that, right? People I talk to want love and connection, and family is important. Now, fear is an activator of all kinds of absurd behavior, right? So if someone's afraid, they might look to a savior, or, the way I'll say it is, for some of us, we believe that the way to safety is to get rid of all the guns. And someone else believes to create safety is that we each have at least 3 guns, right? Now, I have strong opinions about it, which I'm sure you can imagine where I land on it. But is the pushing against going to really create change, right? So when we have these extreme events in the world, they're a wake-up call, but it doesn't mean we're going to wake up. It means we have an opportunity to. So how can I stand for peace and love in the midst of that, instead of marching against something? I don't know if I answered that, but maybe Amy, do you have anything to say about that?
I think the word that keeps coming to me is surrender. Surrender, and I think that's also for me like the leaning in, and not the reacting. We have that negativity bias. We're human beings, right? So we have that little thing that is going to see sort of the negative side or want to react. Yeah. And when we can get on top of that observer, and really come from the leaning in, the surrendering. Mm-hmm. It's the what is the being in the world, not of the world. Yeah. I love that one. Okay, let's check in because I know the feed is it's moving quickly.
I bet it is now.
Yeah. Okay, so Beverly says, how great to hear you express how to deal with our current events. I'm glad you made it. Thank you. Thank you. Renewing of our minds and hearts. Yes, TJ, thank you for this message. Sometimes I catch myself when we pray. Let me read this a little bit long. When we pray, really believing we're all love and light, really feeling and believing that. But then in everyday life, totally not feeling the other person is that. I have a friend who calls himself a narcissist and acts with disdain toward pretty much everyone. I can put myself through the paces of trying to understand him or simply recognizing where he is, but I have a hard time liking or loving him. There are so many other examples of people who put me through my paces on trying to love them truly. Can you talk some about this and how I can improve my relationships?
Well, I don't have to like everyone, but I do, in my own experience, recognize that I can be the frequency of love with them. So when I have caused harm in the world, which I have, it was because I had separated from the truth of who and what I am. I had separated from my essential beingness. So if I can look at someone who is behaving in ways of anger, rage, finger pointing, trying to cause disruption in the world, acts of violence, can I look for the request for love? It's usually not conscious, right? Like, is a mass shooter looking for love on a conscious level? But it's a symptom of something. And so we want to ask ourselves, because I really appreciated that you used the word narcissistic, right? We have some narcissistic political leaders right now that don't care. They don't seem to care what harm they're causing in the world, at least from my opinion, right? There's my opinion. But what happens when we resist them, right? We're going to go back to that. So it becomes really powerful. How can I be the change in the world? That doesn't necessarily mean that I can change someone. That's really fundamental, being the change in the world, because what I know to be true is that most people on this planet really want to love, but we have been programmed, or we've taken on things that are not of love. And the reason I'm pausing is I'm thinking of like the archetype of someone who has their heart closed, that is just like resistant to love. Underneath all of that, they're longing for love and connection, right? I think that's true. That seems true to me. So how can we start to look for that? And I want to be clear, what Amy and I are talking about right now, this is not a path. This is a path of strength. This is a path of courage. That's why I love that reading, because it's honestly easier to be angry and to judge. It's simple, right? I'm right, you're wrong. End of story. Let me post about it. I love the meme where someone said, I just posted my opinion on Facebook. That made everything better. Right? And so that is in a lot of ways easier. As a matter of fact, defending could be seen as easier. But having an open heart is an act of courage, because there are times that I might have to encounter uncomfortable feelings or sadness or anger or hurt. And many of us are defending our heart, right? Maybe that's what violence is about in general. Violence, for the most part, is a distortion of the truth of who and what we are. It's a belief in our separateness. Most war is either about religious beliefs, I'm right and you're wrong, or this is my land and I'm going to take it, or you have what's mine and I'm going to take it back, right? So it's all ego-based. War is purely an act of ego, right? We wouldn't be at war if we knew who we were, period. So consciousness shifts, and it may seem like, am I doing anything? Am I doing anything by loving more, loving fiercely? And I know that it's true that the answer is yes. It may not be the same kind of tangible result as I would get from resisting someone, but the more and more we do this, and I know everyone watching right now already does this, we already recognize that love is how we really change. So being that frequency of love may not have those immediate ego results, but that's how change really gets created on the planet.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. You said it, being in the frequency of embodiment. You know, it's really, I grew up in a church where we would say a lot of things wrote, and one of them was, it's so funny how you can remember things. I believe in God, the Father, Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. And it's one thing to say, I believe in something, I believe in God. It's quite another thing to be in the embodiment of that and know that that is the essence of who you are. And in so knowing that is who you are, how you show up. And it's a practice, right? Isn't it a practice that as a spiritual being, we're always in this practice of being the embodiment of God. And, and so that's where I live a lot. Okay. There's feed is going. So let's check in here. Otherwise I'm going to get way behind. Oh goodness. Let me scroll back up where I left off. Okay. Thank you for your questions, everybody. This is great. I have learned that negative and positive are at the opposite ends. And if I push out one, it returns to me and like. So if I push out positive in return, and negative returns negative.
Yeah,
Great.
and I would even invite. So this is where I'm at. And who asked that, Amy, or who
So
said that?
that is Lewis Williams.
Okay, Lewis. I absolutely yes, and I want to add an and. And I am questioning the concept of negative and positive lately, because not because I don't think they're real, but because I'm questioning them to see if there's another level of awareness I can tap into. For example, working in mental health and in the addiction world, a lot of times we teach our clients how to get rid of negative emotions. Well, what if emotions weren't negative, right? And I talk about this a lot, so this is definitely a repeat. What if I could say my sadness holds transformation, my anger holds a possibility that I can get in touch with how I want to be a part of changing the world or serving the new paradigm, maybe more accurately. And so even the concepts of positive and negative, and one of the things about writing books is conscious recovery has the term negative in it more than once. And I'm like, oh, I wouldn't use it today. So just being in the question, what if there's a dimension of consciousness that's beyond the idea of positive and negative? That, I remember early in some Buddhist teaching that karma, there's a level of consciousness that's beyond karma, which is cause and effect, which could be positive and negative. In other words, when I tap into my essential beingness, I can view the world in a very different way.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. So many so many thoughts are coming around in my mind.
This could be 3 hours. I made a joke before we went on air that we might be doing questions till 3 o'clock. So we'll see. We
could easily. Well, TJ and I have a track record of probably the longest lunches on
That's
the
true.
planet. So we could chat on and on. So Ron says true power is our capacity and willingness to feel our vulnerability and emotions without judgment, to live in surrenderance. Yes.
Oh, can you read that one more time? That's so beautiful, Ron. I love the way you languaged that.
Wordsmith. So true power is our capacity and willingness to feel our vulnerability and emotions without judgment.
Yeah. Do you hear that? That's so layered and so gorgeous. It's our ability and our willingness, right? To be in the vulnerability. It's that's so beautiful.
And that's uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable space, right? We're back to.
Well, here's what's interesting though. It is uncomfortable in the beginning, but then it becomes super comfortable, right? Because it's my resisting. Like, let's look at vulnerability and emotion, right? It's my resistance of those emotions that keep them alive. So, I thought if I felt all of this, like when I was healing some of my trauma from my childhood, I thought, I can't feel this. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. And my nervous system was doing everything it could to not feel. And then as I got into practice of, allowing myself to feel, which for me included being in a fetal position on the floor at some points, wow, there's freedom there. It's actually easier to feel and to be vulnerable than it is to defend and resist. But it is uncomfortable in the beginning, that's for sure.
And that's the freedom. That's really the liberation. Because once you get to that side and you realize how much work it takes to hold all that defense,
yes,
protecting and all of that. So thank you, Ron. Beautiful. So sometimes I have to decipher some of the typos. Be true to ourselves by being peace and kindness by ourselves, or when we have big opinions about being forced to go back to work or disagree with our friends about being safe during this pandemic? Do we stand up or be quiet? So I think she's asking, having difference of opinions about, things that are unfolding or rules and things.
So I'll tell you, I'll say it this way. I don't know what is right for you, but what I do know for me is if I put that opinion out there really strongly, I just know it's going to be met with resistance. Now, so I think the question really, maybe the deeper question is, so does that mean we just don't, ever tell people what we think is the best thing right now? And again, I don't have the answer for that. What I know to be true for me is that the resistance creates more resistance, and that I can stand for something and not against. And it's tricky when you're looking at something like COVID-19 because we might believe, but this is really important because our lives are at stake. And so I would say be open to the question. Going back to what was said earlier about, do I absolutely know what I know is true for certain, right? So there might be a little bit of resistance, because when I started inquiring for myself, do I absolutely know what I believe about COVID-19 is the ultimate truth or the truth? Do I know that for sure? There was a part of me was like, yes. Oh, wait. I don't actually know for sure, right? And so being in that, I think there's more openness, right? We could talk about that for another hour, but I think I'll leave it there.
It's perfect.
Just
Perfect.
Noticing what fear creates. What does the fear create?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fear brain does create a different response for sure. So Nancy asked, when you say lean into it, what do you mean? I think I don't know. I think we both said it. What I mean when I say lean into it is feel it. Feel, like TJ said, the quote, feel the feelings, invite it in, embrace it, dance with it, say, what is this all about? Where does this come from? What does this mean about me? And just lean in as in invite. Do you have something?
Yeah, because you brought up the book, the I think it's like the 7 something for conscious leadership. That's the book. In that book they talk, I think one of the principles is to feel your feelings, or some version of it. I know in Conscious Recovery I write about that as well. The authors say feelings or emotions are actually a physical sensation in the body, but we usually attach a story to it, right? So if we allow ourselves to feel, like, again, David Hawkins says, if we felt our grief fully for 20 minutes, we would be complete with it. I don't know if that's true, but that is certainly something to be with, right? When someone dies, because, welcome to planet Earth, everyone. This may sound harsh, but people die. It's really my relationship with what we call death that creates my experience of it. So if we say things like, oh, Amy, I'm so sorry for your loss, but she's in a better place. That's very well intentioned, but I'm saying, I'm sorry that you're having this experience, but it is an experience on planet Earth. What if I said, Amy, how are you doing? And how can I support you? Right. And maybe then Amy would say, I feel really sad, and she could just cry. And maybe she says, I feel really happy. I worked with someone that had been the primary caretaker of their mother for 10 years. She was on her deathbed. And when she died, my friend was dancing and jumping for joy because her mother was free from this, and so was she. And she's like, I'm afraid to tell people I'm happy, right? Because we have this culture that says you should be really sad when someone dies. Now, I usually feel sad, a great deal of sadness, when someone makes their transition. I had a friend make his transition this last week. He was 80 years old. He was a beautiful man who made a powerful difference on the planet. And I allowed myself to have the sadness and then also feel the joy of the difference he made in my life. And I think, as the reading said, part of him lives in me. Right. And that's the greatest gift I can offer, is something I do on planet Earth will stay alive in someone after I'm gone. Now, we could get into all our theories about what happens at death, but what I'm pointing to is, what if we just allowed each other to feel, instead of had these different ways that we unconsciously get someone to not feel? Because if I say to Amy, I'm so sorry, but she's in a better place. Let's not feel right now. Let's not acknowledge how you're feeling. Let's just say, oh, everything's okay. What if it's not okay? And what if it's okay to not be okay?
Right. Yeah, this reminds me of a conversation we had some time back, but it was about passing the tissues when somebody was crying. Do you remember that conversation we had? It's sort of like interrupts the emotion and the feeling of that moment. Not that, the gesture, of course, is loving and kind.
Exactly.
But in a way, it's like, okay,
I'm uncomfortable with you emoting right now, so let me give you this. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's see what's going on here. We've got a lot. As you said, this is Lewis again. As you said, we all go through this process of blame and finger pointing to self-blame, to taking ownership of problem. As we grow, we will eventually get to ownership as a true leader. We are all the potential to be leaders. We all have the potential to be leaders. Absolutely. Yes.
And we're all leaders. We're all leading. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And I really appreciate that you talked about the self-criticism, because I think sometimes when people talk about accountability, they want to shift the finger pointing from them to ourselves. But this isn't about blame. Accountability is something really different. I'm accountable for my own response, my own emotions, my own points of view.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, always back to within. Thank you, Lewis. He's offering us gratitude. We appreciate you being here. Karen says, what is the name of the book you said at the beginning? Was that Power versus Force, David Hawkins? I think?
Yeah, I think so.
And David Hawkins has other great ones.
Amazing.
Oh, yeah. I think it's David Hawkins who was mentioned at the beginning, Karen.
Yeah.
Gail says, TJ, this was such a wonderful message. When you live in a residence for senior citizens in Tennessee, there is an abundance of opinions that are different from this person from California, and an open-mindedness and humor are essential. I imagine so, Gail.
Notice that I laughed. So yes, right. Absolutely. My first spiritual teacher, Mary Helen Brownell, just a beautiful woman, and studied Eastern thought. And she ended up in a retirement complex on the border of Texas and Oklahoma. And she said, I just had to learn how to say, I adore Jesus. And she said, that's true. I do adore the life energy, the love that Jesus came here to teach. And so it was interesting for her that, like, okay, that's the end. It's the seeming end of this particular life, that I'm surrounded by people that have a really different point of view. And again, isn't that interesting?
Yes. Yes. Ronnie says, having an open heart is an act of courage. So true. Yes, it was Power versus Force. Yes, asking for love, perhaps the same as we did when we were small children. Yeah. So early on, I was taught to always work together for the good, and that usually was identified as a win-win. Also, to be the change I want to see in the world. As I contemplate, it seems that stance is coming from good, bad, right, wrong, ego-based. So my question is, how does change occur then?
So I love that you're asking this. And who asked that?
That's Jan.
Oh, Jan. Okay, great. Perfect. So in my first book, Conscious Being, I write about the levels of consciousness, right? And it's very similar framework to Michael Beckwith's. We came up with that supposedly individually, but it's very similar. I think a lot of times when we think of doing good in the world, we think that now this isn't usually conscious, but we might be helping victims, right? So we might say, I'm here to help the oppressed, but I'm creating a paradigm where I'm better than, and I'm here to help you. And so how do we really be the change in the world? When's the last time you sat down next to a homeless person and asked them their story? Do you look at them in the eye and see the God essence that they are? If you're called to do work in the world, can you, instead of being a paradigm that I'm here to be a good person, right? Because I think, this is for me, Jan, this isn't for you. I have often done service so that I can feel better about myself. Now, there's a paradox there, because when I'm in service in any way, I do feel better. But if I'm doing it so that I can feel better, I'm probably in a paradigm of I'm the one with the answer, I'm the good one, and look at me, how great I am. And again, that's just for me, because I've done that a lot. When I view the person as having infinite potential and capability, right? So that's, you know, the cliche is rather than giving someone fish, we teach them how to fish, right? And so I think I'm answering your question, right? So I think real change comes from being in the world and not of it, as Jesus said, and also recognizing the potential in each person. If, for example, I work in the addiction treatment field, and I think a lot of counselors and therapists view the clients as broken in some way that needs our help. First of all, it's exhausting because I can't get them to get better, right? Because I have a construct that they need to be better. But when I hold a space for their infinite potential, they tap into something much greater. And that's how change really happens. What if we, and this isn't about dishonoring someone's experience. Like if we look at Black Lives Matter, there's rage that's coming up because of the years of oppression. So we can stand for equality. But if I'm looking at a group of people as a victim that I need to somehow help, that's perpetuating the old paradigm. If I say, wow, this is coming up, what is being called within me that needs to change, right, rather than what needs to change in the system. The system starts to change, and yes, it's important to be an advocate, at least in my experience, for, you know, laws and policies and the systemic issues. But if I'm coming at it from this is broken and I need to fix it, I think we just create more division.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were talking about this, it reminded me of the O Ho'oponopono and not seeing that there's a problem, not seeing the, you know, the prisoner and the psychological issues, right? So that's a whole nother story. And we have a lot more comments, and I'm going to keep going. I know we're 11:20 something, so I'm going to just keep going. And so we might be a little bit late on our interactive call, but I think that's fine because I think these are really wonderful conversations. So I'm glad you're all here sticking with us. Where did I leave off here? Let's scroll. Ron says, so true power and change is living and surrendering to non-resistance and noticing when I react resistant and judge my experience and be willing to feel what comes up by being vulnerable. I am in authentic power. Yes. Jean asked, but TJ, wouldn't you agree that the Stonewall riots in 1969 started a major shift for the gay and lesbian communities? Certainly only a start, and there is a way to go. But my late 90s aunt had to live her life in the 30s and 40s in secrecy and fear. Sometimes love and non-judgment are not enough.
Okay, so there's a lot of layers there. Yes, I do think that it made a difference. Absolutely. Just like I think that what's happening right now with all the demonstrations around Black Lives Matter, it is important to honor and recognize, you know, what happened with Stonewall is that there was rage there and they're like, no more. I do think it has a place, but the question is, what creates, I think for me, what creates more lasting change, right? What creates, see, we end up, I think, in a paradigm of like, either the riots are good or bad, right? Or the anger is good or bad. It all has a place. The last thing I want to do is say there's something wrong with the way someone's doing it. Yes, it can create change and it can create awareness, but I just think it's not the whole story, right? I think the deeper change, and I'm careful the way I say it because I don't want to go into the wrongness of anything. There was a tipping point that happened where I think, you know, people felt there was so much oppression that there was an explosion of what happened. And then I think the real change came from people starting to recognize the possibilities, right? If we look at gay marriage, that would have been absurd to a gay person in 1950 to even imagine that that was possible. You know, in my journey, growing up in the 70s in the Midwest, I would have never imagined that. And I just feel in my body that, yes, the Stonewall riots had a part. The demonstrations have a part. The parades have a part. All that has a part. I really think that some of the profound change has come from the courage of people sharing authentically their experience. You know, most people perceive an other when they haven't met the perceived other. Most Americans haven't left our country, right? And so that's very telling, right? When I go to different cultures and I see people that I might perceive in my mind are different, I recognize they're not. And so the more and more like LGBT people that came out to their families, maybe their fundamental Christian families, etc., people were like, oh, these are human beings, right? And then that shift starts to happen. So I don't think it's either or. I think it's both and. I think they both have their place. And I myself in the early 90s participated in some of that. And that was part of my evolution. And I wouldn't want to reject that as being bad. But I also recognize, that I feel like the deeper change that's wanted also happens in those conversations.
Yeah, that's beautiful, beautiful response. And I think what we're talking about, the paradigm, what did you say earlier? The us and them paradigm. But anyway, it's moving out of the either or and into the both and, really just reframing all of this. And so I just hear that in your language. So thank you. So Lewis says, interesting response, gives me thoughts to meditate on. This is a few responses ago. I do believe that there is one spirit spiritually, and that is love. That there is on one spiritually, and that is love. We as humans have created positive and negative. Yes, there is really only love. Yes, there is really only love. It's the humans that make
and it's and again, it's not, it's like I look at it as different levels of awareness, right? At one level of awareness, we can perceive that we're different than some people, both in our opinions. There is positive and negative, etc. I don't have to reject that. I can say, oh, I wonder if there's this other level of awareness as well. And for me personally, it's just more accessible. My ego doesn't fight back as much if I say, oh yeah, okay, I can see how that's true. I remember a good friend of mine, she said that her practice when someone would judge her or come to her with something like, Amy, you're just such a gossip, she would pause and say, I can see how you're right about that. I can see how that's true. I've been joking with my husband, Will. I've been joking. I'll say, ooh, that was an interesting decision. I might make a similar one. Right. So like when I'm like, that's really, I judge someone, it's what it was. And then I'm like, oh, that was an interesting choice to post that, to say that, to do that. I can see how I might make that decision too. So it's just more compassion.
Absolutely. Compassion. Huge. I love that. I love that. Yeah. I use I call it my just like me practice. Just like me. Okay. Where am I? I'm sorry. I keep losing my place. Dawn says, I try not to share my opinion unless something might actually be gained by the sharing. It's difficult, however. Thank you for your honesty.
It sure is.
Tricia says, great conversation. Karen says, thank you. Let's see what Dave says. TJ, thank you for the reminder that our friends who have passed are still with us. Yes. How could they not? Chuck, I'm thinking of you in my life before.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. What a loving reminder. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Yes, Chuck is with us.
Yes.
Pat says, yes, it's power versus force. Yes, David Hawkins. Don says, I recently wrote, loving everybody with the love that every golden retriever shows toward each of us would resolve a lot of our relationship problems. Indeed.
It actually might resolve all of them.
Yes, right?
That's unconditional love. I think that's why we really love our pets. There's two things I want to say about pets. One is their unconditional love. And two is we know that the time is limited and there's something precious about that. Right? I don't get a dog thinking this dog is going to live for 90 years or 70 years, right? I recognize, at least on some level, and I think there's something precious about that. Unconditional love, being present in this moment, not living in fear of the future, just being right there. I mean, our angels, our babies, our animals teach us, how that there was everything I ever needed to know I learned in kindergarten. We can say everything I ever needed to know I learned from my golden retriever. I love that.
Yeah, it's true. Catherine says unconditional, protective, joyful. Okay, they're having a conversation. Luinda says, I love what you said about looking into the eyes of people and see their heart and ask what is their story. Yes. Yeah. I love that too. I do that a lot, and it's amazing. It's amazing what you hear.
It is amazing.
And
it's easy. Go ahead, Amy.
I was going to say, I've always said that you would never feel as another or an enemy if you sat down with everybody and looked in their eyes and talked to them. It just wouldn't. I just don't believe it's possible when you connect in that way.
Amen. And that's it. That's it. It's easy in San Francisco. I've lived here for 29 years. It's easy to, just get into a zone and not, see other people on the sidewalk or, in particular homeless people. And when I heard Ellen Burstyn tell a story that she was studying for a role to be a homeless person, and she spent the day dressed as a homeless person in Beverly Hills, and she walked up to these two women eating at an outdoor table to ask them for money because she agreed that she would only eat what she was given. This woman handed her a $20 bill but never looked at her. And she said in that moment, she realized that what people are really longing for is love and connection. And when I heard her say that, I dedicated myself to looking deeply into the eyes of homeless people. And some people might say that that is scary, right? You don't know but for me, it was something that I dedicated myself to. And I know that I felt much more open, much less judgment, much more curiosity, and deep connection with myself and the other humans on the planet.
Absolutely agree. And, I just want to feel into this just for a second, because I feel this was something hugely profound for me doing the same thing. But I asked myself, why do I feel that kind of uncomfortable? Like I want to not make eye contact. And there was some level of like guilt or something, like feeling. And so moving, and again, back to the question, Nancy, leaning into that, embracing that, what is that about, and moving through. And then on the other side of that, just having such a different experience connecting and looking and actually talking. And interesting too, that she said that experience with just being handed the money and not even having a connection, because we know that story about the babies that were fed, with bottles, but never handled, and they perished because they didn't have that loving connection. We're just so vital for us, human beings. Okay, a few more last comments and questions here. Catherine, to me, rage is a very human reaction to injustice, but when it turns to hate, no one is free.
Beautifully said. I don't have a thing to add to that except for thank you. That's
You.
gorgeous. Yeah.
Yes, I feel that too. Beverly says, thank you everyone for remembering and loving Chuck. Yes, of course. Thank you for being here, Beverly. Chuck is in our heart with us. No, Chuck is here. I feel him all the time. Gail says, thanks to all of you. The whole service was wonderful. Thank you for being here, Gail. Jan says, we love and miss you, Gail. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. And the majority stuck with us here to the end. What time is it? Let me see. It's 11:34. Wow. Wonderful, everybody. Well, we love you. We appreciate you. Remember to check our website for all the groups. And if you have prayer requests, all those good things. I am going to close this with our prayer of transformation. And then I'm going to just go right into our Zoom link. So just head right over there. Ron has a candle lighting for us. So get a candle. He's got a message for us. And then we'll go into our mingle and chat time. Thank you, TJ. I love you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Love you all.
I appreciate you. I know I am expressing from all of us how much we love and appreciate you and your presence and your essence. Thank you. The light of God surrounds us. I am light. The love of God enfolds us. I am love. The power of God directs us. I am power. The presence of God watches over us. I am presence. Wherever we are, God is and always shall be, and we are divine. You are divine. I love you. I bless you. I will see you right here next week, same time. It's a date. Mwah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, TJ. We love you. I'll see you soon. Hop over there right now. Bye, everybody.